Hello, and welcome to Unlocking Your Potential Strategies for Standing Out in the Graduate Psychology Applications Process. My name is Bree Yancey. I'm the Graduate Communications Coordinator for the University of Tulsa Graduate School, and I'm joined here by Dr. Joanne Davis, who is the Director of Clinical Training and the Department Chair for the Psychology Department here at TU. And this is a very exciting event for today, and I hope you all learn a lot from it. And so wow. So now I will pass it along to Dr. Joanne Davis. There you go.
Thank you, Bree. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm very excited to talk to you about the process of applying to graduate school. It is a long process. It takes a lot of time and energy and resources to figure out how to do this. So I'm really excited to be here to give you some hints and tricks about the whole process. I'm going to talk for a while and walk you through the process, and then at the end we'll have questions. You can also feel free to put questions in the chat as well. All right, so I'm going to be taking you step by step through the process of applying to graduate school, specifically for psychology programs. So I am the director of the clinical program here at the University of Tulsa, but I am also the department chair. And here we have two different master's and PhD programs. We have a master's and PhD in clinical psychology, and then we have a master's and PhD program in industrial organizational psychology. Okay, so at the very beginning, in your early undergraduate years, just moving to college, it's a big transition time. You're transitioning to a new place, to new people, new expectations. So early on, it's really important to focus on your classes and focus on becoming part of that university community, both in your major and otherwise. So much going on at universities and colleges, and so many different ways to get involved and meet people. So that really is your focus at the beginning. If your goal is eventually graduate school, you probably realize that the bar is going to be pretty high. So the bar to get into graduate school is going to be high. So it's really important to work hard in classes early on to make the very most of the experiences that you have. And I'll be talking about some of the specific experiences that you might look for that'll help you with the process. So you want to be working with your advisors to be able to take some of the core classes in your major towards the beginning of your journey. Most people are also trying to complete their general curriculum requirements at the beginning of their time. It's also important to get involved in your major. So depending on the school that you're at, this can look a lot of different ways. One thing that is the same, though, across universities and colleges is the importance of getting to know your professors. Go to their office hours. I think some people think that office hours are when professors are trying to be alone in their office and get work done, but that's actually the time for them to see students and to meet with students, not necessarily just about classes, but to meet students to talk about careers and give advice, talk about opportunities for graduate school, things that are going on in the department. So don't hesitate to go to the office hours. You know, have a chat about the classes that you're taking, the opportunities within the department, talking about your career goals. It's going to be really important that your professors know who you are. This is going to help them to think about you when opportunities come up. And it'll be immensely helpful down the line if you end up asking for letters of recommendation. Most psychology departments have a Psych-Hi chapter, that is the Psychology National Honor Society. So everybody is able to attend Psych-Hi meetings, even if you're not a member. So that would be an important way for you to start getting involved within the department. So going to the Psych-Hi events. Some programs and departments also have clubs that are a little bit more social and a little bit less academic. And so join that and run for office, like get involved in these different activities. Psych High has opportunities for grants that undergraduates can apply for, and this can help with research, this can help with travel to conferences, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it can also, this involvement can also allow you to get to know your professors on a different level, as they often serve as faculty advisors for these groups. So get involved. As you move through your progress in your program, perhaps by sophomore year, but most definitely by junior year, you should really be getting involved in a faculty member's research lab. So at our university, because we have graduate programs, every faculty member has a research lab that includes both graduate students and undergraduate students. So the way to figure out what people are doing and how to get involved is to go to the faculty members' web pages to see what type of work they're doing. So typically they will list out the types of research studies that they're involved in, their general area of research interest. Find somebody who's doing something that you think is interesting. If nothing sounds interesting, join a lab anyway. So the real important part at this level is getting research experience. It doesn't have to be in something that you can see yourself doing for the rest of your career. It's more important just to get those experiences. And I'll talk more about research in just a little bit. The other thing that you can do is to start gaining some professional experience. You can volunteer, for example, at an agency or a nonprofit in your vicinity. They frequently love to host undergraduate volunteers. And this can be a great topic of conversation to have with a graduate student in your lab or one of your professors to find out their thoughts about different agencies in the community and how you might be able to get involved in that. Again, I'll talk about this more in a little bit. During your later undergraduate years, you also want to start preparing for the graduate record examination, or the GRE. So you want to start looking at practice tests. You want to start scheduling times, make plans to do a practice test or two before you have to do it for real. At this point, you can also start exploring programs that you might be interested in applying to. So maybe making a list of schools that you want to look into further. I will have some resources for you at the end, but one of the main sources for this is called the APA's Graduate Study in Psychology, an Insider's Guide to Graduate Programs in Clinical or Counseling Psychology, or there are many equivalents of that. But you can start to look into different kinds of programs just to get an overview of what programs have to offer and start narrowing down what you think you want to do. And during this time in your sophomore, junior, senior years, you want to continue making and maintaining relationships with professors, especially if you're doing research with them or if you have a class with them. Okay, I wanted to delve a little bit more into research because it is that important. Research is a very, very important part of many graduate school programs. And this is one of the primary things that faculty look at when they're evaluating applications, is to what extent people have research experience as undergrads, what kind of research they've done, whether they have been involved in disseminating that research through conferences or publications. So research is really a foundational activity to think about doing when you're thinking about how do I prepare myself to be in the best possible place to apply to graduate school. It's also a great way, excuse me, to get to know your professors better. Like I said before, a lot of faculty members have research labs, especially those in graduate programs. Those labs are also going to include a lot of graduate students. So this is a great opportunity to meet budding professionals in the field and to get some additional mentoring. For example, my research lab, I have a number of both graduate and undergraduate students, and we have a mentorship model. So every undergraduate is paired with a graduate student, and they do things like look over their curriculum vitae, look over their personal statements, talk to them about tips and hints and strategies for applying to graduate school or looking for jobs. It's just a great way to get to know people better and to do some really exciting things along the way. Some departments offer course credit for research activities, so that's something to look into. And some programs also may have some unique opportunities to engage in research and to get extra benefits from that. So on the slide, I have TURC, which at our university is the Tulsa Undergraduate Research Challenge. And this is a competitive program that people apply for, and it allows them to work closely with a professor over the course of a summer, and they're able to engage in different research projects. There are stipends available to help them do their work. So look around your department to see if they have those opportunities available. You also want to think about opportunities to present your research. So some schools will have research colloquia every year or so. There are also numerous different professional organizations that will host regional, national, or even international conferences. And so that's one of the most exciting parts about doing research is the ability to write it up and then take it to a conference, be able to display it and talk to people who have similar interests as you about the kind of research that you're doing. That is also a great networking opportunity to meet other people, other professors from other programs who might share interests with you. You definitely want to work really hard in your research lab opportunities. Not only are you gaining really valuable experiences, but those experiences are going to go on your resume or your curriculum vitae. And the people that you are working with on the research, the graduate students, the professors, are going to be very influential in your future career down the line. These are people that you'll probably stay in touch with for a long, long time. And those professors are likely going to be the ones you'll ask for to write letters of recommendation. So doing a really good job, getting very involved is going to be super helpful. Now, there are some undergraduate institutions that don't offer adequate opportunities for research at the undergraduate level. If that is the case, or if you want to do more research before you consider applying to graduate programs, I know of a lot of individuals who have taken a gap year or two to specifically focus on research. So there's many institutions, for example, the Veterans Administration or the VA, that offer paid research positions to people with a bachelor's degree. So looking around your community for such opportunities might be in your best interest. Wanted to say a little bit more about professional experience. So during your undergraduate time, there's opportunities to get involved and get some actual experience working with people, patients or clients. You may not get a whole lot of direct one-on-one time, but it gives you the opportunity to see how different places operate and the different services that can be offered through agencies and nonprofits. In some programs, you may be able to get course credit for these opportunities. So here at the University of Tulsa, we have a community practicum that people can take when they're upper level undergraduates in the psychology department. There also may be internships that you can apply for. So I would encourage you to talk to people in your career center to ask about these opportunities. Another important part of professional experience is that it can be helpful in honing in on what populations you do or perhaps do not want to work with. So you may think that, I am great with kids. I want to work with kids when I'm a professional. And then you get some experience and you decide, well, maybe that's not for me, or vice versa. You may decide, absolutely, that's the direction that I need to go in. So looking for those opportunities, talking to people in the department and at the university can be super helpful in getting that professional experience. So a lot of programs, graduate programs, will require you to take the GRE. This is something that you can take more than once if you want to. I definitely recommend taking a practice test or two, just to get the feel of what the test is like. You may even want to consider enrolling in a GRE preparation program, especially if taking standardized tests is not your specialty. If you struggle with that, it can help to take a preparation program. You do want to look at the potential sites that you're thinking about applying to. So one, you want to know if they require the GRE at all. There are some programs recently who have been kind of walking away from the GRE as a requirement. So some say it's not required, but you can take it, it's optional. Some say it's not required and they won't even look at it, and some places still require it. So it's a good idea to try to understand early on what the expectations are for the programs that you're interested in. You also want to see if programs require the subject test. So there's a psychology subject test for the GRE, and in my experience, that's pretty unusual for that to be required to apply for graduate programs, and so may not be worth the extra cost. In general, I looked this up today, and the GRE is about $220 to take in most places. So that's something to consider, and it may require some planning to save up those funds to take the GRE test. So you definitely want to make sure before you take it that the places that you're planning to apply to actually require it. Okay, so you've decided that you want to go to graduate school. You kind of know maybe the type of psychology that you want to do, but how do you choose a program? So there are so many different factors that go into choosing programs, and so many of them are personal to you. So you might need to be considering geography. Where do you want to live? So a lot of graduate programs, if it's a PhD program, you're going to be there 5 or 6 years. If it's a master's program, probably more like 2 years. But you want to think about your quality of life and where you want to spend your time. You want to think about relationships as well. If you have a partner, are they able to travel with you if you need to travel for graduate school? You want to think of the cost of living in the place that has the programs that you're interested in, and then the opportunities specifically within the graduate program itself. For psychology, many graduate programs work on what's called a mentoring model. So you're not only choosing a specific program or programs to apply to, and most people do apply to probably around 10 different programs, but you're also applying to work with a specific professor as your mentor. So some people start with deciding which professors they might want to work with and then apply to those programs. Other people choose the programs first and then identify potential mentors that they would want to work with in those programs. But it's really important to identify a person within a program that you want to work with, and that will come up in a couple of different slides as we go forward. So where do you even find out about the different programs? There are a number of different professional societies that have lists of graduate programs by research interests or overall topical interests. So for example, I am a director of a trauma lab, and so I get a lot of people applying to work with me who are really interested in doing trauma work. And so they might find out about me if they go to the website for like the International Society for Traumatic Stress Studies, for example, or Division 56 of the American Psychological Association. They have lists there of the graduate programs that have people who specialize in trauma. So that is one way to try to find out different programs. Again, I mentioned before the Insider's Guide to Graduate Programs. This can be a very useful tool to help identify programs that you might be interested in. There are also some specialties, including clinical psychology, that publish information on their websites about different qualifications of students, current students and recent students. So you can go to the websites and look at those. It may be helpful to look at those sites to kind of gauge your competitiveness for different programs. They also have information on how many students are offered admission, like how many apply, and then how many are offered admission, and how many ultimately matriculate into those programs year to year. So for clinical psych programs, this is required by the American Psychological Association that every program include this information on their websites. Some websites also include information about funding, so what percentage of their students receive funding. And we can talk about that at the end. My experience is that that's usually a primary question that people have when they're starting to think about graduate schools. How am I going to be able to afford to do this going to school? And we can talk about that. So I was going to show you our website. I'm not going to do that because if I do that, it's going to take me out of this presentation, and then it takes a while to load the PowerPoint back up. But you can go to the University of Tulsa's clinical psychology program to get an idea of what I mean. So on that page, we have the information about the number of people who apply and who get in to our program, how long it takes them to matriculate through the program. We also have information on there about what faculty are looking to accept students this year. And that's an important part that we'll talk about again in just a little bit. But you want to make sure that the person you're interested in working with is going to be available to take students the year that you want to start. Also, lots of great information on our website about the different research projects that faculty have going on. Okay, so within psychology, there's a lot of different degrees, and in the mental health field broadly, there are just many types of degrees that you can get to do work as a mental health professional. So you really need to do your homework and choose the one that is going to allow you to do what you want to do. And you may not know what that is, and that's why having those connections and relationships with your professors is going to be so important, because they can help you to navigate some of this. I have a couple of different types of the more broad strokes degrees up here on the slide that I will briefly walk through. But there are other types of mental health degrees. So with a master's program, either a Master's of Arts or a Master's of Science, these are typically 2-year degree programs, and people can find excellent employment opportunities with a master's degree. There is pretty significant variance, however, from state to state as to how much you can work independently, meaning without being supervised by somebody else. So, for example, in Oklahoma, in order to be licensed to do clinical work, if you have a master's, you have to get a particular certification. You have to become like a licensed professional counselor, which requires more than just a master's degree. It's, I think the LPC degree or certification in Oklahoma is like 60 hours, whereas our master's program is 37. So you definitely want to look at what you can do in the state that you're planning on ending up at and having your career at. And you may not know that right now, so it's probably a good idea to look at a couple of different states and find out what you can do with each. Then there's the Doctorate of Philosophy, so the PhD. The PhD is essentially a research degree, although clinical and counseling PhD programs will offer some degree of balance between training in both practice and research. In our program, we have a really nice balance of training in research and clinical work. So that's an important thing to consider. It's an important question to ask about when you're talking to people about different programs. So we train people to do research that's important in the clinical realm and to do clinical work that is guided by science, guided by the research. And that's one of the ways that we achieve that balance. So it's a research degree. There is a very strong mentoring model in most PhD programs. And because of the type of training that you get in a PhD program, when you're done, this degree will offer you the greatest flexibility and variety of job experiences that you would be eligible for afterwards, because you're getting 5 to 6 years of very intensive training through these programs. Of course, these are highly competitive programs. In particular, the clinical degree is probably the most competitive program within psychology. A lot of clinical programs will receive upwards of 100 applications per year, and they only accept 5 or 6 students. And again, this is due to the resources in that PhD programs tend to fund their PhD students, so they will waive your tuition oftentimes, sometimes also give you a stipend to help you with expenses as you're going through the program. Also, the PhD is a very heavy mentoring degree. You have a very close relationship with your professors. There's a lot of incredible training and guidance that you get along the way. And so professors are only able to bring in typically 1 student a year so that they can provide the attention and that level of mentorship that's expected. There's also the PsyD degree, which is a clinically oriented degree. PsyD degrees tend to be less focused on research, more focused on clinical training. They also tend to be less competitive than PhD programs. And I'm saying these things in general, although particular programs will differ in these things. And the quality is variable across PsyD programs. There are some excellent PsyD programs out there, and there are ones whose quality I would say is not as good. So it's important to carefully research the programs, to think about the kind of training that you want to get, and to talk to people to help you ascertain, is this degree at this program going to get me where I want to end up being eventually. There are also numerous ways that you can specialize in psychology. So I just listed some of the specialty fields that are out there. Our program, again, we have a clinical master's and PhD. We also have industrial organizational master's and PhD. But there's really seemingly no end to the way that you can specialize in psychology. So there's probably one that's out there for you. And again, this is a great thing to talk to professors about. I mentioned that graduate programs oftentimes work on a mentoring model. So you want to make sure, again, that you are applying to work with a mentor, not just to a program. You need to do your homework on this. It's going to take time. So this is something to start maybe even the summer before your senior year, looking at not just the programs, but the people who are in the programs. And again, you want to do your homework. So are they still at the institution? You know, people can come and go from academia, so it's important to know that they're there and they're still doing the kind of research that you're interested in. So you may read a paper published by a professor 10 years ago and get very excited about that line of research, and turns out they're not doing that anymore. So it's important to check in on that. You also want to see if they're accepting students for the year in which you want to start. So again, a lot of professors tend to take 1, maybe 2 students per year, but then they may go years where they're not going to take students for a number of different reasons. So you want to reach out to potential mentors and ask them questions about what their current research is, what they're planning to do in the coming years, and are they accepting students for the year in which you want to start. So when you find a particular faculty member in a program, you want to do your homework, read the publications that they've been working on so that you're able to talk to them either through email or maybe a video chat, all of these communications that you might have prior to potentially interviewing at a site. So you want to make sure that you are familiar with the work that they do. And then send them an email saying, hey, I've read a couple of your works and I find it really interesting. And I'm wondering if you are planning to take students for fall of 24 because I'm really thinking about applying. So perfectly fine to reach out to professors and ask those questions. We get lots of emails like that all the time. So it's not at all unusual. And it's better to have that information than not. So don't hesitate to reach out. After you reach out and they initially respond, some professors may stay in touch, but oftentimes you probably won't hear them again until a decision has made about whether or not to invite you for an interview if you do end up applying to that program. So professors tend to be very busy, so definitely wouldn't expect an ongoing conversation until you get further along in the process. So don't get discouraged if that's the case. Alrighty. So one of the things that all applications are going to require is that you write a personal statement. And this is basically a statement that talks about who you are and why you're applying, 1, to psychology programs, and then 2, to this specific psychology program, and then 3, to work with that particular professor within that program. So it's going to take some time to craft a really good personal statement. You want to plan on spending time writing your first draft, and usually these are like 1 or 2 pages in length. But writing a first draft and then getting it out there for people to see and give you feedback. You want to try to stand out with your personal statement, but you don't want it to be too long. You don't want it to be overly personal, but you also want to give people an idea of who you are and why you're going down this career path of applying to graduate programs. So you want to give them an idea of how you got interested in psychology and what you're hoping to do with it. You want to make part of it individual to each school and individual to each potential mentor that you've identified. So most personal statements have a pretty similar beginning from one school application to another, but then towards the end they say, given that this is me and this is what I've done so far and this is where I want to go, I think X program is an ideal place for me to get additional training. And then you would talk about why that particular program seems to be a good fit for you. And then you want to talk about, I'm particularly interested in working with Dr. So-and-so because they're doing this kind of research and I read this paper and I became so intrigued by this question. And I really want the opportunity to work with that person to keep answering those kinds of questions. So you're going to have a relatively similar beginning for each program that you apply to, and then you want to make it fit with each program and then with your particular mentor. Let me see. Fit is going to be really important, and so it's going to be part of your personal statement is to demonstrate to the faculty that you would be a good fit for their program. So again, remember that Programs receive upwards of 100 applications each year, and they're going to have a number of qualified people to choose from. And so one of the things that they look for is what person is going to be a good fit for our program. And so that ends up playing a really important part. You are going to need letters of recommendation with your application. So you want to think very carefully about who you're going to ask to write you letters. You really want to ask people who know you fairly well. That's why it's so important to get to know your professors along the way. Like, don't wait until 3 months before your applications are due to start talking to your professors. You really want to get to know them along the way so that they can write you strong letters. When you ask professors if they're willing to write you a letter, you want to be specific and ask them if they're willing and able to write you a strong letter of recommendation. Most professors, if you ask them for a letter, will let you know if they really can't write a strong letter. So it may be that you were only in one class with them and you earned a B, and maybe you only came part of the time, and you never came to office hours. Then there might not be a whole lot that they can say about your potential to do well in a graduate program. So again, you want to ask people who know you well and that with whom you've cultivated relationships over time. It's important to know that sometimes professors will ask graduate students to contribute to letters of recommendation. So if you have a graduate mentor that you've worked with in the lab and you two have worked very closely over the years, they might contribute some information about what it's like to work with you, your integrity, your willingness to work on a team, those type of things. So just so you're aware that that graduate students can contribute to those. You want to make it as easy as possible for professors to write these letters because we end up writing a lot of them every year. We write letters for undergraduates who want to go to graduate school, for graduate students who are going on internship, for graduate students who graduated and now they're trying to get a job. So this is a big part of what we do. So the more notice that you can give us and the more you can help us, the better, the easier it'll be for us. So you want to provide your professors with everything that they need. And usually this is a list of the schools and programs that you're thinking of applying to, your transcripts. These can be unofficial transcripts that you provide your professors. It's even helpful to highlight the classes that you took with that professor, just so that it's another way for them to remember, oh yeah, I had you in a couple different classes, okay. You want to provide them with a copy of your personal statement so they know what you've said to the program and they can highlight certain things. You want to give them a copy of your curriculum vitae. So they're aware of all the different things that you're involved in and that you've done. I usually ask students to give me a paragraph about their relationship with me. So how do they know me? In classes, maybe I was a faculty advisor for a student group and they were an officer at one point. Maybe we did a study abroad trip together, but having that information can be very helpful. And then also if they're working in my lab, like all of the different projects that they've helped out on and the specific things that they've done with those projects. And then, so those are kind of the basics, but you want to also ask your professor who's writing it, is there anything else you need? Is there anything else that I can provide? It used to be that I would tell people to provide address stamped envelopes for your professors. We really don't do those anymore. So it's mostly this, the school will send a link and they'll click a link and then they'll go to the link and upload the letter right there. But you do want to make sure that they have all of the things that they will need to write you a letter. So application deadlines for graduate programs are typically in early December. Some of them can extend to January, but early December is pretty typical. Applicants are usually contacted about interviews prior to or soon after the winter holidays. So programs will let you know if they're going to invite you to interviews around that time. And then interviews are typically held throughout January and February, sometimes going into March, but that's getting a little bit late. Since the pandemic, most interviews now are virtual, which is good and not so good. It's good because it saves you a lot of money in travel expenses. You don't have to fly all over the country to interview at programs. But it can be a bit harder to get a real feel for a program and the people if it's all virtual. So that's a bit of a downside. Most places and programs do full day interviews, so you will spend an entire day interviewing with different people, having virtual tours of different aspects of the campus. You will have opportunities to meet and interview with graduate students and professors. It's important to know that even when you're doing some more laid back interviews with graduate students, or you're talking to practicum site supervisors, maybe always be on your game, because all of the people that you interact with are going to provide feedback to the faculty about your experience and their experience with you. And again, it's about trying to establish your fit. How well would you fit into the program? Oftentimes after interviews, if you're given an admission offer, the program may also offer to bring you to campus to visit. I would definitely take advantage of this. Most of the time, these trips are going to be paid for, or they're going to be reimbursed, at least partially. And you definitely want to take advantage of any opportunities to visit the program, the department, the university, and the city where you may be spending a good chunk of your time. So again, for PhD programs, that could be 5 or 6 years. So you want to make sure it's a place that you can really see yourself living in for that length of time. All right, here are some resources. So the Insider's Guide is one example of a library. It's usually at university libraries that you can get a hold of and start looking through to identify programs. The American Psychological Association, their website has a great student portal, so you can get lots of information there. And of course, your current professors. So definitely utilize office hours to ask a ton of questions and try to figure out, the best way to narrow down the programs that you want to apply to. All right. Well, that is me and this presentation in a nutshell. I'm happy to take any questions from people about this process.
Okay, Mallory, I'll read the questions out loud. Mallory said, I graduated with my master's in counseling psychology in 2015. I've been working as a BCBA since then. I'm trying to come back and finish my PhD in clinical psych, but I am 38 and haven't been in school in many years. What advice do you have for me for this process? Can I attend Psi Chi chapter meetings or volunteer in research labs while not currently enrolled at the university? Good question.
Great question. So it's not unusual for people to decide later on down the line that they want to go back and do something different, either respecialize in another subfield of psychology or to get a different kind of degree. So not unusual. If you don't have research experience, then I would definitely look around at the institutions that are nearby, and I would contact the professors and ask about getting research experience through their labs. So it's not unusual for people outside of programs to volunteer time in research labs. Sometimes that takes a little bit of paperwork through the HR department to make sure that you can get keys to the building and the lab. But definitely a great idea to reach out and ask profs if they need any help with anything. And yes, you can do that while you're not currently enrolled. In terms of attending Psych-Hi chapter meetings, I believe that you could do that as well. They're not private events, so it may be helpful to contact the faculty advisor for the Psych-Hi chapter at institutions that are around you for that. Thanks for the question.
Kendall asks, how long would you recommend that we study for the GRE?
Ooh, part of that depends on how much you like standardized tests and if that is in your wheelhouse. For some people, it just isn't. It's a challenge. I think a good couple of months is a good idea for the GRE test, because some of the general GRE is really reaching back to some math that you may not have done for quite a while. So it may take some time for you to feel comfortable. Again, I would also recommend that you take a practice test or two so that you are used to the entire process and the format and how they are asking questions. And again, if you're somebody who struggles with standardized testing, and a lot of us do, you might invest in a GRE prep program. But before studying for the GRE, I would check some graduate programs to see how many are requiring the GRE. So again, some programs are kind of taking a step back away from that. So definitely check into that.
Mallory asks, who is the Psych-Hi advisor at Tulsa?
So we have a new applied faculty member by the name of David Redinger, Dr. Redinger, and he is going to be, I'm 99% sure, he's going to be the Psych-Hi advisor this year. So yeah, you can contact Dr. Redinger. He may be slow to respond because he doesn't actually officially start until August, and a lot of faculty take time off during the summer. But you can definitely reach out to him and ask him questions about meetings and getting involved and stuff like that.
Excellent. Looks like Kendall is typing, so give Kendall some time. While Kendall types, remind me, Dr. Davis, you mentioned a video before. If I find it, could I put it in the chat for everyone to look at, or?
Oh, no, so it wasn't a video I was going to show. It was, so on our clinical psych webpage through the university, there is one section that talks about like how many people apply, how many people get in. It's right on the landing page for the clinical psych program. It says current students, admissions, facts, things like that.
Oh, I see. Student admissions, outcomes, and other data?
Yes, yes, that is
Perfect.
it.
Okay, Kendall. I'm set to graduate this December with my BS in psychology, and I'm looking at fall 2024 programs. It will be in the community psych practicum course. I will be in the community psych practicum course this fall, but would it be worth it to also participate in research this fall? I completed a few months of research my freshman year, but have not since.
Okay.
Also going into my third year to you.
Okay. 100%. You cannot go wrong with getting more research experience. Yes. So if you can make the time and can dedicate the hours, then I would 100% recommend more research involvement.
Okay. And Rebecca, hi, I've completed 2 masters in other humanities fields as well as a graduate certificate in sociology. During that time, I've mostly been in non-psych fields, but I've been involved in the roles that apply psychological theories, i.e. HR, operations, nonprofit management, leadership, etc. Is that a barrier or just a matter of how I frame my background, my journey to IO psychology and a doctorate?
I don't think that that's a barrier at all. I think those are great experiences for people who want to go into IO psychology. So I would definitely talk about, your journey and how you went from one thing to another and got this master's and then that master's degree, and how that has led you to the decision to seek out a PhD in IO Psych. But I don't see that as a barrier at all.
Also, if anyone does have questions about the application process, I will put in the chat my email and my email. So if you do have any questions that revolve around how to apply, what's necessary, are we able to apply to a master's program and the doctorate program at TU?
So yes, although Bree, I don't know if you know the exact process. If they have to do 2 applications, or they can indicate on one application that they want to apply for both.
I think it'd have to be 2 separate. That's what I might be wrong, but my gut says we need 2 separate applications.
Okay, and it can be all the same materials, and you wouldn't need like a separate personal statement for each. But yeah, you can definitely apply to both.
Putting my email in the chat. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you can also say in your personal statement that although you're applying for the doctoral program, if you weren't being considered for that, you would want to be considered for the master's program. You could probably also do it that way. Okay, so I see the text or the chat that came up. So if I already have my master's, am I just applying to the PhD, or will I have to do both? So the people who get their PhD at the university kind of get their master's along the way. Once you have satisfied all of the requirements, you can get your master's degree along the way. So I think, Mallory, you said you had a master's in counseling. So a master's in clinical would be different. So then you would have master's in counseling, master's in clinical, and then PhD in clinical. And in our program, the process, like the courses that you're taking in the first 2 years are pretty much the same for master's and PhD. The big difference is the extent of your involvement in research. So for master's, you're not required to do research, although you can certainly talk to professors and mentors about that, but it is required for the PhD. I'll also say that if somebody wants to reach out and set up an individual time with me, just shoot me an email. It's the easiest way to get in touch with me. My email, I can put it in the chat, I think. And I meet with prospective applicants all the time to talk through different aspects of our program and trying to help them ascertain whether we would be a good fit for them or not. Any other questions while we're all here together?
These are all great questions. This is great.
It's such an exciting process, and I'm so thrilled that we have all of you on the call are interested in graduate studies in psychology. As you know, we need a lot more mental health practitioners out there doing some really good work. So yeah, I'm excited when I talk to people who are at this stage of the process looking to get involved.
Excellent. Well, while we wait a few more seconds, I'm gonna put my email in the chat. So if any of you have questions about the application process or want to check in on some application stuff, feel free to send me an email and I will get you that information as soon as I'm able. But yeah, I just put it in the chat, so here you go.
Looks like we might have one more message coming through, but I'll take the opportunity to thank everybody who got on the call. Thank you for all of your questions. Again, I really love talking to people who are in the midst of making this decision. And if there's anything that Bree or I can do to help you as you walk forward, please don't hesitate to reach out.
100%, 100%. Well, we're coming up to our hour, so it looks like we might not have any questions, but you have both of our emails. If anything comes up after this call, just feel free to reach out to both of us. I will be reposting this recording onto the University of Tulsa's YouTube page after I edit, so it might be some time. But if you want to come back to this information or if you missed part of it, the recording will be available soon. So just so you know. But yeah, if Dr. Davis, if you had anything like a closing remark or anything before we close out.
If you're interested in doing this, go for it. Go for it. Don't be shy.
Excellent.
And reach out to the professors. Go to office hours. We get lonely. Nobody comes to office hours anymore.
Lovely. All right. Well, thank you all so much for attending. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, morning, or night, wherever time it is from wherever you're from. And be safe out there. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.